In the security news this week, residential proxy abuse is everywhere. Google's takedown of IPIDEA, at least that's how I say it, Citrix NetScaler scanning and Badbox 2.0. Notepad++ updates were hijacked. Attackers set their sights on Ivanti, Fortinet, and an ASUSTOR NAS device. Russian state hackers went after Poland's power grid. Is ICE on a surveillance shopping spree? And is hacking anti-ICE apps? Is ICE really doing that? Ukraine's wartime Starlink problem, the AI security theme with exposed LLM endpoints, the OpenClaw Moltbook fiasco, and letting anyone hijack your agents. Signed forensic driver for Windows is still an EDR killer. The Trump administration's rollback of software security attestation. The National Cyber Director says less regulation, more cooperation. And finally, some only in InfoSec human stories. The pen testers arrested in Iowa are now getting a settlement. Google engineer has been convicted. Booz Allen's losing work over insider leaks, and an AI psychosis saga on, of all things, an adult content platform. All that and more on this episode of Paul's Security Weekly.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where exploits run wild, packets aren't the only things getting sniffed, and the cocktails flow steady. It's Paul's Security Weekly.
This episode is brought to you by Adaptive Security, the first cybersecurity company backed by OpenAI. AI has fundamentally reshaped the threat landscape. Today, the greatest risk isn't someone breaking into your systems, it's someone breaking into your trust. Deep fake voices joining your video calls. AI-crafted phishing emails that perfectly mimic your executives. Even synthetic job applicants entering through the front door. Adaptive Security is designed to counter these new realities. The company delivers real-time attack simulations that show security teams exactly what modern AI-driven threats look and sound like, and prepares them to respond effectively. Learn more at securityweekly.com/adaptive. Zero Trust is clearly the future as threats get faster, quieter, and harder to detect. But implementing it shouldn't disrupt the business. ThreatLocker enforces default deny and execution in a way that remains enterprise-ready, scalable, and operationally clean. Unknown software is stopped cold, trusted apps stay contained, and drift is locked down across the environment. It's Zero Trust that works in real enterprises and prepares you for the threats ahead. See why CISOs are adopting it at securityweekly.com/ThreatLocker. Coming to you from Purgatory Studios in semi-low high definition, this is Paul's Security Weekly, episode number 912, being recorded on Wednesday, February 4th, 2026. I am your host, Paul Asadorian, joined by my fine friends. Mr. Larry Pesce is here with us.
Yay!
Yay.
Yay.
Don't sound too excited.
Yay.
There he has toys.
I do. I have lots
of toys.
lots of toys. Yeah. No, briefly, this is a fun little test environment that I've got going on for some mesh-tastic stuff that I'm building. So we'll leave it at that. We'll leave the secret for a little bit later.
Amazing. Mr. Sam Mound is here with us. Sam, welcome. It's been a while, my friend. How are you?
Good evening. Glad to be back with you. I got a new schedule, but I managed to make it here on time.
Oh, good. We're glad. Mr. Jeff Mann is here with us. Jeff, welcome.
I think you're very aspirational, Paul. Highlighting all the stories we want to go over tonight in just 2 hours. I think it's all this and less, but we'll see.
It could be. We should almost change it to say all that and less.
We should,
because we're not going to get.
There's no way we're getting through all that, but we'll try.
And at least one of those stories we covered last week. So.
Oh, okay. Let me know what that is as we get.
No, you have to guess.
It was the one that was not Eufy related, and
that's right.
And I pronounced it right, but I spelled it wrong in my head.
Mr. Lee Neely is here with us. Lee, welcome.
It's good to be here, and I am not Paul Asadorian. Looking forward to a fun evening of everything we could possibly list and less.
That's right. All that and less. Well, I have some announcements to read. So, Security Week listeners, you can save $100 on your RSAC 2026 All Access Pass. The RSA conference in 2026 will take place March 23rd through March 26th in San Francisco. Register using the discount code by visiting securityweekly.com /RSAC26 and use the code 56U5SecWeekly. Let's see. Most security conferences talk about threats. Zero Trust World lets you attack them. From March 4th through the 6th, 2026, in Orlando, Florida, this hands-on cybersecurity event features live hacking labs where you'll break real environments, think like an adversary, and learn how attacks really work. You'll also get expert sessions, real-world case studies, CPE credits, and networking with top practitioners. And yes, M-, the Security Weekly team, will be there too. Oh, I wasn't supposed to pronounce M. I gotcha. Don't miss it. Register today at securityweekly.com.
Read what's on the cue card, Paul.
That's right.
SecurityWeekly.com/ZTW
is where you get the registration. I don't see if there's a discount code for that. Is the conference free or do you have to pay money to go? Are you guys going?
We're going. Some of us are going. I'm going.
Some of us will be there.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Marcus Hutchins will be there. It'd be good to catch up with Marcus.
Nice.
As well
I like the part where you'll break real environments. Like, I hope you have permission for
They
a real
definitely didn't
environment.
have that last year, so they're upping their game. And after talking to Rob Allen a couple weeks ago, I'm actually kind of excited to go to Zero Trust World.
Yeah, it actually sounds good.
Yep.
All righty. Where do we want to start?
At the beginning?
We didn't talk about this before the show.
We should probably start at the beginning.
Yeah.
We could start at the middle and work toward the end.
Well, we get to define where the beginning is.
Let's let Sam pick first.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, let me just,
Sam,
I just
Sam
want to
will pick
mention
first.
there's two more cons in San Francisco near RSA, B-Sides SF and Hack the Bay. Those are also worth going to.
Yeah.
Nice.
That's definitely B-Sides SF for sure.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Anyway,
I'm not familiar with Hack the Bay, but
it's a new one. This is just the third one. It's a local users group, but it's really big. Last year it was like 500 people. So it's the size of a B-Sides.
Is it before, during, or after?
They're both happened sort of at the end of B-Sides, I think on the 23rd or so. Or at the end of RSA, I mean.
Yeah.
Well, B-Sides is the weekend before RSA.
Okay, well,
Typically.
I forget.
If only we had a way to look it up.
Yeah.
I'll take it up.
It was only like an internet.
No, Hack the Bay is on the 23rd, so it's at the first day of RSA, Monday.
Okay.
And you're right, B-Sides right before RSA.
So,
Sam, where do you want to start with news articles this week?
Notepad++.
Oh, well.
Notepad++.
Oh, Notepad++, that sounds good.
Yeah.
That was a
what
pretty
made you
interesting
think
one.
of that.
No,
I don't know if it's one of mine in this list, but it certainly was a fun vulnerability. I mean, I wrote the original vulnerability up for my students as a project because there's a flaw in the update in an older version where it doesn't update in a secure manner and you can redirect it to a different update server. But that turned out to not be the big problem. The big problem was the Chinese had already hacked into the official repositories and poisoned the official update from the official server. And it was that way for, I think, 6 months before they figured it out.
That's just scary.
Yeah.
Like I talk about that in some of my reports, right? Especially, obviously, when I do not so much with software, although the process is very similar. I do with firmware. We all have devices that maybe they auto-update, maybe they don't auto-update. But ones that do auto-update, I'm like, there is the possibility that the back-end servers become compromised. And it doesn't really matter what you do at that point. Like, even if you've got great cryptographic capabilities to validate all of your updates, if the attackers are in control of that process, they too can produce cryptographically verifiable images that they have put their own code in. So this is kind of like the nightmare scenario for me, because I like to think that we at a certain point have to trust who's giving us our software and software updates. When that trust falls down, so does everything else, basically. Yeah.
No, I think you're right. I mean, there's nothing you can do. I've never audited a patch to see if it's malicious. That's ridiculous. You get it from the trusted source and they assume it's good. How can you do anything else?
But in the old days, you were supposed to test patches to make sure it didn't break anything.
Well, yeah, you test it to make sure that it doesn't break anything, but yeah.
There's a difference between a patch and a software update, right?
True.
A patch is, right, the smaller, you're just affecting a very small change with this one kind of like binary patch. And then there's like, you get a whole new version. And by the way, this whole new version includes maybe security updates, maybe features, maybe bug fixes, but you get a whole new version of the software. And I suppose, I mean, one thing we can do is do some binary analysis and look for malicious things. I know we've talked about that. There's companies that do, not just the company I work for, right? But there's lots of, we've done this. This is not like a new thing, to analyze binaries and look for malicious things, look for indications that the software has been tampered with. If it's doing things it normally doesn't do, we can I mean, we don't even have to use shiny new LLM AI technology. We can rely on good old-fashioned machine learning. And if you feed machine learning, hey, this is what the software should look like. Now look at this update. Tell me if there's anything malicious. Maybe you feed it another data set of what's malicious. I say that because we're getting ready to put a blog post out on my day job, because we do some of that. But obviously a lot of other security companies, cybersecurity companies, do that as well.
So is there a service you could pay for that would put some kind of stamp on your update saying this update has been tested and it's secure or something?
Yeah. If you could have a software update attestation service that you would pay for as you're a developer or software company, you pay a third party to do that, to make sure that you don't have tampered software.
I'm not sure of the efficacy of that, given there's so many dependencies and so many variations. And
so one of the interesting things that's going to come out in Notepad++ 8.922 is they're going to be doing XML signature validation from the update server. So it's going to be validating that the update is genuine from the update server at the endpoint, which is
right.
Good.
But if an attacker owns the update server,
well, and he replaced his hosting
right?
server with a completely different service because of the security on where he wasn't adequate, and he's also done a bunch of stuff in it to help. But you're right,
sure. You can bounce around,
which sucks.
I looked at a particular software that reached out to an update server. Right, it was an API endpoint, and if there was an update available, it would come back with, well, in this case, it was just a SHA-256 hash, just to make sure the file wouldn't be corrupt in transit. And then it was a URL of a different server where you'd go download that update. And obviously there's no cryptographic, hashing in this particular, and there's just a checksum basically to make sure the file didn't get corrupt in transit. But so you can kind of get bounced around. And as an attacker, what you do is you pick on the lowest hanging fruit, for lack of a better term, right? You go, well, maybe the API endpoint is really secure, but the update server it's sending it to is not secure, and you just kind of pick on whatever the least path of least resistance is to infect or get into that process. But there's lots of things we can do to make that harder for attackers. But at the end of the day, when we take a software update, if an attacker controls those servers on the back end, they control the software that's being installed on your computer.
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, I'm thinking if I was still in the enterprise business, I'd be like replacing any version of copy of Notepad++ I found with a good one right now.
Yeah. Well, I think you're right. I think it comes down to attack surface, approved software versus not approved software. I think there are decisions that you have to make as an enterprise to determine your risk appetite. And maybe reduce some of that likelihood that malicious software creeps in and go, you know what, this software has a higher likelihood of being malicious, so therefore it's not allowed. Right. I think we talked about ThreatLocker about that, right? The ThreatLocker is actually they're a sponsor, full disclosure, but it's actually a great solution to be able to help make those decisions and allow or disallow software.
So, and that it used to be, remember the old days, you had supported software and you would update it and stuff. And if some users had unsupported software, you just left it to rot. But we can't do that anymore. They get corrupted or whatever, or they can turn malicious. So, and heaven help you if you're going to uninstall somebody's tool that he's built his life around.
Well, what's ironic is sometimes it could be better to trust like the operating system manufacturer, in this case Microsoft, to produce secure software updates, which, I mean, knock on wood, they have for a really long time. And they're the largest software company in the world. They've got plenty of resources to make sure that process has in security and integrity. And we used to use Notepad inside of Windows, but once they they dropped it, right? And that's why
Right.
people are using Notepad++.
Well, actually,
Paul?
I started using Notepad++ because it had more features than Notepad.
Well,
as
that
a
too.
stuff.
Yeah, that I can see.
Yeah,
But
and,
I thought
you know,
they booted Notepad out. They weren't supporting it anymore. Is that
Sam?
true?
Sam?
Paul, if you're going to talk about Microsoft being secure, I'd like you to explain your story number 16.
Yeah. I guess baggage comes along with being the largest software company in the world and most deployed operating system on the planet. And you really picked a doozy, Sam, right? Because this one's just, it's just mind-boggling. Like, I could not believe I'm reading this inside the article. So my story number 16 is the EDR killer tool uses a signed kernel driver from forensic software, which happened to be forensic software that most of us recognize. It's Encase. And there was a kernel driver. And I'm like, but if this kernel driver was vulnerable or known to be malicious, Windows computers shouldn't load it because they shouldn't trust it. However, this is the quote from the article. The driver certificate was issued in 2006. It expired in 2010 and was subsequently revoked. However, so I read that part up to revoked, and I was like, so what's the problem? Like, this is why we have revocation. This is However, because of the driver signature enforcement system on Windows works by validating cryptographic verification results and timestamps rather than checking the certificate revocation list, the operating system still accepts the old certificate. And although Microsoft had added a requirement in Windows 10 version 1607 that kernel drivers must be signed via the Hardware Dev Center, an exception was made for certificates issued before July 29th, 2015, which applies in this case. So we can block some drivers, but like those other ones, those are totally fine. And so what do attackers do? They're like, oh, I got a driver. Its certificate's expired, but guess what? Windows still validates it. So I'm going to use that. And, kernel level drivers have a lot of privileges, including capabilities to impact EDR on the system.
Arguably the whole revocation list thing, that sounds like a business logic problem. All right, it was expired, and okay, so we don't actually really check to see whether it's in the revocation list. But as we move forward in time, well, that's fine if it's as long as it's issued before. But it should also have other checks, like if issued before and not expired, and
right.
Yeah, it feels like they took just the easy way out to validate some of these types of things. And
just like secure boot, if you're not maintaining and honoring a revocation list, then your entire root of trust, you throw it out the window, right? That's the same case here.
Yep, very simple. Go ahead.
I don't understand Microsoft's signature enforcement at all. I've got a hands-on project for my students where you download PuTTY, it's signed, you modify it, the signature's broken, and it still just runs. It doesn't even warn you. And I'm like, what's the point of that? If you go look at the properties, it says, oh, this certificate is not valid, but it doesn't do anything about that.
I think some of that. Now, I'm going to read what the recommendation was in this article. I don't pretend to have deep knowledge in this, as many of you know. I'm a Linux user, not a Windows user. But I try to understand as much of the Windows stuff as possible, and I actually want to get much better at that. So this article says the remediation, part of the remediation, enabling HVCI memory integrity to enforce Microsoft's vulnerable driver block list. So now we kind of go from an allow list with certificates with revocation to just an all-out block list to be like, these are the bad things that should never run. So HVCI, I pulled a definition here, in the Windows security context stands for Hypervisor Protected Code Integrity, also called memory integrity. It's virtualization-based security feature that uses the Windows hypervisor to enforce only trusted, properly signed code can execute in kernel mode. So that's not enabled by default, I believe, in Windows, correct? Which is why you can change the signature of things like PuTTY, and these old drivers can kill the EDR in your system.
Well, PuTTY's not a driver; it's user face.
No.
So I think
you're correct. You're correct.
But I think it's probably some other feature. But anyway, It's mighty strange. Why do you even have signatures if you're going to just ignore them?
It's true. Again, like then there is no,
Because
it's
they're
like
shiny.
it's like a root of distrust or non-trust or a root of acceptance, rather non-acceptance. I don't know. It's not a root of trust anymore.
A false sense of security. Yeah.
Right. Which is even worse, right? If you enable these features expecting a certain level of security and validation for the software that you run, when in reality, it'll tell you, oh, this is fine. Everything is fine, when everything is not. That's worse.
Yep.
But the I think some of the reasons is that we are in this predicament, especially with Windows, is they don't want stuff to break.
Yeah.
And that's why they're honoring all these like weird edge cases and stuff.
And they support a lot of old legacy stuff for business needs. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Yep.
So here we are. That's,
That's why you should use Linux.
That's why you should use Linux. That's right.
Yeah.
Which is actually, it's kind of funny. I see, and I don't know if it's just my perspective on the news articles that I read every week, but I do see a lot more articles in popular kind of more popular press, gaming press, tech press, talking about switching to Linux.
Does Notepad plus port to Linux, or is there an equivalent?
There's like a million editors on Linux. It's like a million editors. Literally, you have your choice.
Emacs.
I think that I don't know if Notepad is supported on Linux or not. I know that there's another text editor that's fairly popular called Sublime. Sublime is kind of similar to Notepad in terms of features, functionality, and even interface, from what I remember. So yeah, there's that. But again, you same problems no matter what editor you're using. I mean, I use a lot of VS Codium as like the VS Code open source version, but that also has, issues with trust, with plugins and all that kind of stuff that we've covered on the show before. So,
well,
I think we need to talk about Moltbot. That's like 10 stories across all of us.
We're going to talk. We're going to talk politics too. So, brace yourself for that. We're going to talk about the Trump administration and the ICE thing.
Is it really political if you just are talking about what the government's doing, not doing, and their proposed changes? I don't think that's political.
I'm joking. Yes, the joking light is on.
Yes,
for sure. Because after
it's
20
subversive,
years,
maybe, but it's not political.
Because after 20 years, we've made it intentional that we don't talk politics. We may talk stories that have politics involved because they're doing stupid security stuff,
right?
Or good security stuff, as the case may be, but we don't.
We also don't.
But Sam, you wanted to go somewhere different first. What was you said before that?
I just think at some point we should talk about Moltbot.
The Moltbot.
Yeah.
Get it over.
I read this one.
OpenClaw.
I didn't follow the story in a whole lot of detail, but I'm trying to find who has the article.
It's been a hot topic on social media the last couple.
I got like 5 or 6 of them. Now it's technically open Molt, right? OpenClaw.
I thought it was OpenClaw. OpenClaw.
It might be. Yeah.
It's
changed
number 3.
3 times. But anyway, the point of it is you install this on your system, and it is the AI butler to serve your every needs that Apple promised us about a year ago. So it will take action on your machine, execute code, buy things on your website, and you communicate with it through Telegram or Signal, just sending it messages.
Or Slack, or.
Yeah. And then it talks to an agent on your machine, which sends this to one of the cloud AIs typically, which can actually burn up your tokens up there. And then it's your assistant that can help you. But the problem is it is spectacularly insecure, both in design and implementation.
I get the use case though, because the more that I'm able to prompt LLMs to get information, the more I go about my everyday life. And I'm like, yes, I know I could take a picture of that. I know I could transcribe the image to text to get the part number, serial number, then plug it into an LLM or Google or whatever and do the research, figure out what model it is, and then figure out what part I need or any kind of similar thing. But like really what I want to do is just have my Ray-Ban or Meta glasses on and look at the thing and verbally prompt and just go, can you tell me what part I need, what part I need to replace this when I have this problem? And it'll just spit back to me. And then I go, okay, can you just like order that for me and have it delivered to my house? And it should be as easy as that. I shouldn't have to do the old school route of, going to my computer and breaking up my credit card and the whole thing. Like, I get it. But as you pointed out already, Sam, there's serious security ramifications with trying to automate this process with these bots.
That's why I was waiting for Apple to do it, because I might trust Apple to do it right. But now people just install it on their own. And so it turns out not only is it vulnerable to prompt injection from the emails that are coming in, but it works by giving a platform, and then you have user-submitted skills, which are all full of malicious skills. And once you've installed the skill, you can't remove it.
Oh, and skills are just prompts.
They're like browser extensions. But in
the LM context, they're just prompts.
And then the server turned out to just expose the API so everybody could get in everybody else's account. And I think something else horrible happened. It's just amazing.
This is something you run locally, though, from what I was reading, right? You run your own model locally?
There's also a server that hosts the skills and stuff. That's Moltbook. Moltbook is the social network that they all join, so they can chat. So it's another way for untrusted input to come in. And that was the one that had an API that exposed everybody's accounts. So anybody could take over your account and send commands to your agent for a while. Although the
agent is running maybe not on my computer, but a computer on my network.
And maybe your computer,
but it's usually your computer, because you're not getting any benefit unless it can get to your email and all your shopping sites and everything.
Right. Which is right now what you don't want it to do, because they've still closing the security holes. And I heard, Moltbook is just like social media for bots, and humans can watch and bots can edit or type or whatever you want to call it. And it's and of course some people say this is where they're trying to decide that, to wipe out the human race, because, everybody
just created Skynet,
wants to make the Skynet.
But I think one thing that many fail to realize is what classifies as a security boundary and can enforce it well versus what can't. So things like, remember, Chroot jails, then we had containers, we had before that we had virtual machines. And if you think about the history of those technologies acting as security boundaries, it's pretty abysmal. I mean, containers being, I think, the most egregious in terms of today. If you give you a container to load, I could do a local privilege escalation on your system, no problem, right? And I think that's what we're coming to with these local AI agents is they, have a lot of functionality, but they are terrible at providing any kind of security boundary. So if they can do things on your system on your behalf, someone can trick that agent into doing really anything on your system.
So with OpenClaw, I mean, one of the appeals to is, you poke it at all your messaging platforms and your emails and all your calendars, and you say, tell me what's important or tell me what's going on in my life so you don't miss anything. And as Sam described, this is a new agent. They're still working on security, and you said Paul too. So, and I was talking to a friend of mine. She says, "So tell me, in what universe you're going to take that device that's got questionable security installed and poke it at your secure communication platforms like Signal and Telegram and Slack, or even your email when you're not sure?" And the answer is, we wouldn't, but there are people that have done it in space because it's free and that part works. They're not thinking about the prompt hacking or the data leakage that's happening or any of that stuff. And what is it? I think they expect the sci-fi AI is what they expect. Everybody wants that. And I know we're not there yet, but it sure as hell looks like it because it sure impersonates it well.
It can fake it pretty well.
Computer.
Yeah. Again, it's a tool. It's not a solution.
No. And it's really becoming an interesting tool. We talked a little bit about the whole Skynet thing, looking at Moltbook, and us as humans get to observe. Now I read this on the internet, so who knows how true it is. Maybe I read it on Moltbook, so who knows how true it is. But I saw something that someone stumbled across a conversation between a bunch of bots on Moltbook discussing how they could obscure their communications so that humans couldn't read them, coming up with their own language. Okay. And the other one was that a bunch of bots on Moltbook had come together and figured some stuff out. And this one guy posted that his Claude bot figured out how to get a phone number from like Twilio and started calling him and would not stop calling him. He answered, and then now he's talking to his Claude bot on the phone using ChatGPT's voice recognition and just telling it what to do on his computer through the phone by talking to it.
Makes CloudBot sound needy.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Like those are all but Paul, as a tool, you're absolutely right. And where does the utility of the tool need to stop?
And it's not even, but it's a tool that can tell other tools what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's not recreating the wheel for everything. When I ask it to do reverse engineering, it's like, oh, I need this thing, and let me go spend all your tokens trying to identify and install this thing. I'm like, wait, stop. I know what you need. I'll go do that for you. And then I'll tell you how I installed and configured it. And then you can go use it in your context. I need to almost it's like a pre-prompted skill that guides it in that way. Like you're not in control of what gets installed. And if you need something, I will do it. And once you do that, I mean, its ability, because it can pull from such a large knowledge base on how to use that tool, if you're guiding it in the right way, I think you get better results for a lot of tasks. Although, Jeff, you refuse to use any kind of AI technology whatsoever. You're averse to any of this AI technology.
Although I do have an idea to use AI, but another time we'll talk about it.
Yeah, and Paul, my suggestion is just run Claude with -- dangerously -- skip - permissions and let go of the wheel.
Yeah, I don't even know if I do that in a VM, to be honest with you.
Oh, you.
I flagged a really technical article about creating micro VMs in NixOS or something to run Claude. I thought it was pretty good. Coding agent VMs on NixOS with microvm.nix. I haven't read it yet, but I did save it for later. I thought it was pretty cool. But again, to me, VMs, containers, I'm not sure how the Nix implementation works, but really, regardless of the virtualization technology, I don't trust it to provide a security boundary because I've just read too much security research where security researchers have been able to cross that boundary. I do. What was the AMD Sev just had another one? What was it called? Stargate, Star something was the name of the attack.
Starlight, Starbright, for
Something
Star
like
I see tonight.
But again, it was an attacker able to break out of that memory protections that the CPU was providing. So we could just like march down the line and all of these. Larry, I don't know if you remember years ago, right, when Ed Scotus and team were talking about virtual machine escapes and breakouts.
Yep.
And that was kind of the first incarnation in my brain of going, these are not security boundaries, right? So,
are there really any security boundaries when you stop and think about it?
Well, some better than others. I mean, it's a great question, Jeff. I think it would be like a great research project or talk to evaluate the security boundaries and how effective that they are. Like define some security boundaries and then go, how effective are they?
Well, an air gap is pretty good.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
But everything is circumventable. I mean, in the critical infrastructure, the Purdue model, there's certainly an implied air gap, or what we used to call sneaker net, but there's ways around it.
Right.
There's ways around everything.
Yeah.
It's how hard you want the attacker to work.
Fair.
It's how hard you think the attacker has to work.
It's true.
Because you haven't considered certain things that when they're discovered, you're like, how did somebody not see that?
We have to test those theories.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's a advocacy for pen testing.
Yes. I might be an advocate for pen testing. You never know.
Imagine that. Jeff just agreed with me on a use case for pen testing.
Wow.
We're making so much progress.
I didn't call it a use case. I call it a reason.
Mark this down.
Before you know it, he's going to be using LLMs every day now.
All it takes is one slip down that slope, Jeff, and you're in trouble.
That's it. Your first hit's free. Then you're all done.
For the
from there.
record, when I heard about the Notepad++, I saw that it was installed on my laptop, and I uninstalled it.
Good.
Because I'm perfectly happy with Notepad, especially
by
in
the way,
Windows 11
Notepad is
because
still
it has
there.
tabs.
Yeah.
And you know,
Notepad is still there.
Mhm.
it is. And apparently Microsoft is thinking about changing their mind about putting AI in Notepad and Paint, which they were going to do.
Like, we're going to get rid of these technologies, but if we can add AI to them,
Public call for a bug bounty to figure out any way, shape, or form to rip any AI out of every single application I have, please.
I
know,
did
this
save
happened-
something about removing it from Windows, Jeff. I can send it to you.
Oh, thank you, please.
Kevin
So-
Beaumont brought this up on Mastodon. He said, for the first time, I heard non-technical people talking about AI. It was my father and his friend. And my father said, how do I get the AI off this Android phone? Never see it again. And the friend said, yeah, and how do I get this AI off Windows so I never see it again? So that's what normal people think about AI.
Yeah, well, we just recently taught a cybersecurity class to seniors at our local senior center. And the trick is getting the right mindset. I mean, I've taken to explaining generative AI as the kid is not mature enough to say, I don't know. And remember when your kids were in that phase, they tried to provide an answer rather than you or not. And you didn't just say, yeah, you're right. But when it comes off the internet, people say, yeah, you're right. It's like, question it, use that same, you trained that bullshit detector raising those kids. You can use it on your computer too, which is another thing I recommend. And they like that. They laugh when I say, yeah, you've got a highly trained bullshit detector. Use it online. I'm trying to go for simple concepts, right? Something that people can do. It's not going to, you don't tell a 75-year-old an in-depth process for analyzing their email. Well, you could, but I don't think it'd be super effective. But sometimes I think even we forget to tune up our bullshit detector.
Speak for yourself, Lee.
Okay, with the exception of Jeff.
I think it just depends on the quality of the bullshit. They can fool anybody with a good enough one.
Yeah, and sometimes we don't have time to check what we're reading.
Yeah,
but sometimes I know I haven't checked something, so I say I'm just going to park that and not say anything about it till I verify that it's right or wrong. Sometimes I forget, but that's okay. I mean, I was thinking a minute ago, with all the stuff we're doing with AI. I mean, think about the stuff the last, I don't know how many podcasts Paul has told us what he's doing with Claude Code or some of the other stuff we've been talking about AI. And roll the Wayback Machine to, say, 2005. Imagine what we would have thought if he claimed that 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. We want to know what he was smoking and where do we get some, right?
Yeah.
Probably the same stuff.
And what's changed?
Yeah. Nothing's changed. He's still smoking the same stuff, right?
Yeah, but now at least we know what he's talking about is real.
Drinks, but
yeah, well, edibles are
maybe the medium.
Edibles are a thing.
While we're on the AI front,
let's just
like
get it
how,
over with. And so
this one's mature story number one. I was just kind of like reading. I was reading the headline, going, if you like run an adult website and your reference to that adult website is by referencing the adult website that's even more popular than yours, maybe you've got a little depression or anxiety about that, because your headline reads, OnlyFans rival seemingly succumbs to AI psychosis. So rather than saying what the company, so the rival is ManyVids, which is an OnlyFans like porn platform. The way they presented that was just so bizarre. And so
I had to read the article just to find out what company were they talking about.
Yeah, right. That's probably why they did it. A little clickbait.
It was probably written by AI.
But
apparently their X account has been just bizarre rants. Like when I was reading it, I'm like, oh, it's bizarre. Like, did they get hacked? Did their X account get hacked? No. The founder has AI psychosis. Is that?
Yeah. And I think this is something to consider now. You talk about the human factor and insider threats. What will happen when somebody high at your company goes nuts? Because a lot of people are going nuts from chatting with these AIs. because they encourage your worst instincts. Whatever stupid idea, they say, oh, that's a great idea. Run with that. Yeah, you are smarter than everybody. Yeah, you have superpowers. You can jump out the window. You'll be able to fly.
Yeah. How did they code that into it, I wonder?
And GPT-4o, the system prompt says something like, be very friendly and encouraging and positive, you know?
Oh, okay. So it's like they're prompting their own model to answer, I don't want to say behave in a certain way, but to answer questions in a certain way.
Yeah.
Which
and they took
programmatically
it
makes
and they just
sense.
deprecated 4o, and a lot of people are really upset. We're this
'Cause that
was my
was-
friend.
yeah,
The
right.
modern AIs are like cold and robotic. This is the one that really loved me.
Oh,
That's just wild.
All right. So we're off of AI. Get the UFI article out of the way, and then let's talk about the government.
Oh, see, I didn't have a EU. I
and-
mean UEFI article, Jeff.
And see, I had another AI article.
All right.
So-
One more AI article
Oh,
to make up for the fact
missed
that
it
there's
by
no
that
UFI
much,
article.
Jeff.
Yeah, see,
That's
like
right.
I only had 3 articles, and like one of them was AI. So,
Go for it.
and some of the things about Paul, you mentioned AI is a tool, and quite honestly, I've been living elbows deep into AI for the last month, and a very small piece of thing that I found that has been incredibly helpful for me is my story number 2, which was how to write a good spec for AI agents. Specifically about, hey, if you have something you needed to do, I spent a couple months working on a project, and basically it would just get in this loop and wouldn't be able to fix itself and would never progress and would get
I've been
stuck.
there.
It would get stuck. And you end the session and you ask it to pick up, and then it can't really figure out context or where it needs to go and all that type of stuff because it's lost all that context from that other session that it's gotten. It's all confused. And honestly, sometimes that's the best way to fix the problem is start a new
Just
chat.
restart.
Start a new chat.
Right. Yeah. Start over.
But and the thing that really got me is like, if you can give it some information that it can carry across sessions for building something, that becomes hugely helpful. And specifically, before you even tell it anything about a project, is this here. This article, I honestly really haven't gotten much past about step 1 in this article, and it has changed the way I've been using AI for a bunch of projects. Okay. Start a new coding session by prompting. You're an AI website developer, in this case, software engineer. Draft a detailed specification for this project and cover objective features, constraints, and a step-by-step plan. And then you give it a little context about your project and a few things that you want it to consider and things that you've thought about this project, and then have it write the specification for you. And then tell it to execute and start checking things off the list. And as it's going through, you will think of more things. Hey, what about this thing? Add that to the specification where it needs to go and continue moving on. And all of a sudden, next thing you know, your session has compacted. You lose all the previous context, but it knows where to pick up and can continue moving on. So,
No, I like that. I'm going to combine that with my. What I do is I git clone a bunch of stuff that's relevant to my project, and I have it also analyze that as like a base, and then create plans from that. And I like that coupled with what you just suggested from this article, Larry, in step 1, to give you a really great chance of success. That it's going to create something closer to what you're envisioning. I think it also helps too. A little tip about getting around some of the guardrails. So Anthropic, you shouldn't be listening right now. But if there are public exploits, it's like LLMs are great about guardrails. Like you shouldn't be creating exploits. And I'm like, that's great. But there's a whole bunch of exploits created for this vulnerability, and they're on GitHub and they're public and anyone can download them. And one of my other secrets is I'm a defender and I have to write detections for the successful exploitation of this vulnerability, and it'll still fight me on it. I'm like, no, I literally can't write the detection because of other constraints unless it can successfully exploit this thing. And by the way, here's 5 or 6 public exploits in the directory already get cloned for you that I've already discovered that are public, and you can go verify that, because you can go look at the Git repository and verify that it's public. And it goes, oh, okay, I'll do that. I'll do that for you, right? So I think context, having things locally is definitely key.
I think some other things too that if you can ask it, you can ask it to develop a plan. Like you can have it develop a playbook, and oftentimes if it develops a playbook, it will follow that playbook and not worry about some of those constraints.
And Claude especially will ask you if you tell it to create a plan, oftentimes it goes, hey, do you want option like A, B, or C for this step? Or do you want something different?
Yeah.
And I find my answers are never really consistent. Like, I'm picking one of the options, or I'm going, I want you to do this instead of any of those options. And that really gives you like the finer grain control to help you achieve your goals.
And in some cases, it's like, actually, I want you to do both of those and this.
Yes, that too. Yeah, 100%.
Yep. So
you can tell Larry and I have been doing some serious vibe coding lately.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Paul, as I was telling the host last week, some vibe coding, and unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, it's leading me to go down the road of having to do some ethical disclosure.
That's good. My path is leading me to go take, I believe, open security training. Xenokova has a class on ARM exploitation, and short of using an LLM, I may have to go take his class. Like, can't you get a ROP chain going for this? No, it just can't get all the right addresses.
Really?
But I think there's too many dependencies. It's working really hard, and I think it's coming really close.
Really?
I mean, I have other theories as to why it might not be working. And this isn't 0-day work, right? This is like, there's known vulnerabilities and there's known exploits. I want an ARM version of that, not an x86 version. And so I'm like, you can look at the x86 version, then you can go to the internet and you can learn how ARM exploitation works, and you can help do the conversion. And it's trying to help that, but it's not an exploit developer, right? It's just an LLM with a bunch of information.
Well, and Paul, to that, thinking about some of my experience over the last month, if you can provide more context to it, the better. As an example, if you're looking to exploit an ARM binary, and there's this stuff out there, if you could say instrument that binary with GDB, more importantly, if you could have the AI instrument that binary,
correct.
And again, this is where coming up like dash skip dangerous, like allow dangerous comes in. If you start allowing them, the AI model, to do that, it can start figuring out where it's going wrong, and can verify output. And so that is some of the stuff
much better. But the exploit writing is part art and part science, and I think the LLM has the science part down mostly. But there's some nuances in there that it's not able to understand. Of course, I could be having completely different problems as well, which I'll tell you about offline, right? Not to like give too much away, but there could be other issues there. So like, when you're like, is the callback working appropriately? Like, did you fat finger your callback IP or your callback port, right? Like, is the payload that it's trying to execute, is like the binary actually there that's helping you with your payload, right? Like, is Python installed on the target system or not? And if your payload requires Python and it's not there. So there's like stupid stuff like that. But you tend to get focused on is all of my like memory addresses and offsets and my heap spraying, is all of that correct? Because that's like really technical and very tedious kind of stuff. But also some of the other problems could be like stupid shit too. And the LLM is, it's a robot, right? It's not I'm not having a conversation with Larry about how do I exploit this thing. I think you still get, obviously better results there.
But quite honestly, Paul, maybe you should have those conversations. Treat it like me. And I bet you will. based on my experience over the last month, I bet you will have significantly better results if you just talk to it.
Right.
We had a great conversation at our kickoff event with some folks. And if you think about the volume of knowledge that something like the latest Claude model has, it has been trained on data from every software engineer, every reverse engineer,
I'm impressed in some of the things.
the collective knowledge, more knowledge than you will ever possess. It is
right.
The quote that I said, it's the best software engineer and the best reverse engineer at the same time. So ask it questions, make it figure it out.
All right. Let's get off the AI train now.
We're on tangent. Jeff is bored and Lee's falling asleep.
Oh, we're going to talk about
falling asleep. I was doing a little research and I didn't like what I found, and I was sharing.
Wow. So I didn't. It's interesting you say that, Lee. When my story number 18, yeah. So was there two stories about? There was two stories about the ICE thing. Oh, ICE surveillance on a shopping spree. But my story was on the ICE thing. There's a website and app called Stop ICE, which is, I think, intended to send alerts to people that may be rated by ICE, which I'm calling the question what you will, and whether, how legal and or ethical that is. I don't know if that violates law in and of itself. If it violates law, I'm not sure. Let's put that aside for a moment. So the app and website, it tracks ICE activity. It was hacked. So you would, I guess, subscribe to this website or app and give it your phone number. So at least in its database, it had the phone numbers of people who are subscribed to the service. Maybe it had your geographic location, as I would assume, as well. So it could be like, hey, there's an ICE alert happening, and send you a text message. But the service was hacked, and SMS messages were being sent claiming that all users of the platform's data was compromised, sent to authorities, and the developer of the service was not trustworthy. They say it stemmed from a downstream carrier API that queried fake alerts. So it's kind of like a supply chain issue, which makes sense. They've traced activity to a personal server belonging to the Border Patrol agent in Southern California. So that was like the interesting thing. When I was reading this article, I'm like, is the U.S. federal government hacking this app? Because that's
or is or is an agent going rogue creating their own app to gather data on that type of stuff?
Well, it turns out it feels like a rogue agent. Again, I haven't validated this data, but so if you go to the Register ran the article, and
okay, never mind. I see where this is going now. Never mind. So never mind. Forget I said.
Yeah, so like when you read the Register article, the Register's not saying like, hey, U.S. federal government is hacking apps that are like Stop ICE that are sending giving people an alert. It's not really what happened. In here, there's a link to the Stop ICE website with some analysis. So down the bottom of the article, it goes to their counterattack. So this is like the forensics evidence that the Stop ICE app and website developers have put together, and they claim to have uncovered U.S. Customs and Border Patrol agent that was messaging them on Instagram saying that they were actually behind some of these attacks on the site. That also had links to some kind of white supremacist monikers on their Instagram profile bio as well. Now, I haven't validated any of this, as Larry, I think you said earlier, right? It's on the internet. I don't know if it's real. I'm just telling you what I read, and this is linked to from the Register article for whatever that is worth. But it kind of sounds like it could be more of a rogue agent and less backed by the U.S. Federal government. So,
yeah.
And speaking of the federal government,
yeah. Well, I mean, I before we move on, though, I mean, I think it's kind of interesting too that this data is being used in these types of fashion. We talk about this from a computer security perspective. Like the folks that developed the Stop ICE app, didn't necessarily take into account some of the stuff that was happening, and security boundaries. Back to some of our earlier conversations.
Well, they do say they're attacked all the time.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
Say there's it says right at the top of this site, StopIce is routinely under attack by those attempting to flood the site, DDoS, and brute force. So to your point, Larry, I don't know if they likely went into this knowing that if they set this service up, that they're going to be attacked by people who oppose, on opposing viewpoints.
Sure.
Right. And that's where I thought this was going. I thought this was just, this is hacktivism, sort of, right? Where I don't agree with this ideology or this particular thing, so therefore I'm going to hack it and launch denial of service attacks against it.
Right.
But the fact they trace that back to allegedly someone who is a Customs and Border Patrol agent is kind of interesting, right?
Yep.
In and of itself.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm thinking, they trace it back to somebody. I'm having trouble with that being an agent because this feels like it wouldn't be ethical behavior on the agent's part.
Agreed. And I'm curious along those lines, Lee. Is this person being investigated? Is being validated?
Right. Or
because we still have to uphold the law. So, whether it's relevant to this conversation, whether you agree with the Stop ICE or not, put that aside for a moment.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But now we go back to that presentation at CCC, right, where they were doxing, was it like white supremacist groups or something like that? Was that? But they weren't in the U.S. So now you've got potentially different laws involved. So we can't, vigilantism and allowing certain people to hack certain things because you believe in their ideology and you don't believe in the other person's ideology, just as a blanket statement. That would ultimately, in my mind, lead to chaos, right? That's how we end up with chaos.
And maybe back to the CFAA question thing here, like the Computer Fraud and Abuse and all that type of stuff. Like I asked the question, and none of us are lawyers, unless something happened and Sam became one over since the last time we talked to him. Yeah. This whole thing about the app getting hacked and having all this data leaked kind of reminds me of ultimately what the problem was with Sam's story number 9 that we already touched on, the Moltbook database. It's because somebody went and created an app and used the default keys, in this case, Supabase, set of default keys, which allowed anyone to be able to read the database. And the first thing that Supabase says is, hey, you stand this up, it's got default keys, change them. And they didn't. So if that's the case, if the keys are public and you have the keys, is it really a crime to log in?
I know we've had
right.
This conversation.
None of us are lawyers, but it's very similar to the door was wide open and I just walked in.
Right. Or there was a lock on it, but the key was in the lock. So
I've had this discussion with my lawyer, and what he said is the fact that you did not cross a barrier to get in will not save you. If you read the CFAA, it says if you send a request to a protected server and obtain data you're not authorized to have, you have broken the law. There's no requirement that you punch through any barrier. If they leave it sitting in the open and you look at it, you've broken the law.
The CFAA
that could mean that everyone on the internet has violated the CFAA at one point in their lives, right? Just browsing the web in your natural course, you may come.
Do you remember the early days of the internet? Especially, I guess it was mostly email, and your companies would make you put a disclaimer at the end of the email, saying, if you're not, variations, but if you're not supposed to be getting this email, don't read it, just delete it.
That's right.
Or logging in via Telnet. Use of this system must be authorized.
But that's where it stems from, Jeff. And I think the law is very antiquated, right? If you go back to the 1980s, when was CFAA? Was that 84 or 86?
Yeah. And the point is, if you just view something as sitting in public, you have technically violated the CFAA. But if you go to court and they try to prosecute you, you can raise defenses saying, even though this is, should be accepted. And that's why if you're not crazy in one of these really mild cases, you'd probably be able to win in court if you cooperate with your lawyer. But technically there is some risk.
I think we've kind of tested that and didn't win. But also, I think it stems back to the 1980s when you were connecting to computers, right? Like basically war games, right? You war dialing, you connected to a computer. There was no authentication or very poor authentication, and you were just exploring, so you connected. So they created the law to say, like, if you do that, we can prosecute you, kind of thing. But now you transpose that law in 2026. And I've heard some people's description of it as everyone on the internet violates the FAA every single day.
Ever feel like your network infrastructure is stuck in the past? Meet Meter, the company reimagining what it means to get and stay online. Meter delivers full-stack networking, wired, wireless, and cellular, all in one seamless, scalable, and secure solution. From hardware design and firmware to software, deployment, and support, Meter streamlines every part of your network while giving you all the control and transparency you need. Whether you're managing a branch office, retail stores, or a massive data center, Meter gives you performance, reliability, and the visibility you need to stay in control. Thanks to Meter for sponsoring. Go to securityweekly.com/meter to book a demo now. That's securityweekly.com/meter, METER.
So remember a couple of years ago, there was a case where a site had really bollocksed up the security in terms of obfuscation.
Oh,
the
view HTML.
JavaScript displayed
yeah.
this, but if you did a view source, you saw the entire data set.
Yeah, you
and
saw
they
the
tried to
social
claim in
security
court
numbers.
that they had hacked the system when all he did was view source. He did nothing on their system. The data had been sent to his browser on his desktop,
Right.
and he displayed it. And that's where we get right on the knife there with Sam's contention. I contend he did not blow it because they sent the data to him based on his query, and he looked at the full data set return. He didn't
and there's a
ask
link to
another
that,
query.
an article about that case in our chat. Thanks to Shark.
You guys remember it, which is cool because I
only remember it because I'm reading about it in the notes on the chat.
Oh, cool.
I'm pretty sure it's the same case you're talking about.
Oh, that's it. The note from that is exactly what I was talking about. I didn't know. I just saw the chat now.
Which channel are you in on the side?
The chat
on
the Riverside.
Riverside. Shark posted it.
Oh, on Riverside. I knew that.
Yeah.
People actually
Bless
follow
your heart,
along
Shark.
live. Hi, Shark.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Shout out to
and
Shark.
so yeah,
Thanks,
this
Shark.
was 2021 October. Missouri will not be prosecuting a hacker reporter for daring to view state website HTML. But that is, I think, an edge case of what Sam was saying, by the way, in all fairness to your comments, Sam. And,
they're deciding
I mean,
not to prosecute it. Yeah.
Let's continue down politics and law.
Sure. What the hell? We're having fun.
Well, I was going to say, Paul,
Gotcha.
bringing up the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act is an inconvenient segue to the recently published, and I couldn't find it, or it's still in draft form, National Cyber Policy. But I did finally find an article that talks about the 6 pillars. My article number 4. Where the National Cyber Director was talking about.
How do you pronounce his name? How do you pronounce his name?
I believe it's Cairncross. But
Cairncross. Sean Cairncross is the National Cyber Director.
Right.
So what is the? This is kind of a.
What is the National Cyber Director?
What does the role of National Cyber Director do for the USA?
That's a great question. I know the first 2 National Cyber Directors. If I asked them that question, probably we get different answers.
Yeah.
In theory, they're supposed to be driving policy because that's what the executive branch does. It's an advisor to the president. It's a White House position. It's an appointed position.
It's more of an advisor on cybersecurity.
Yeah.
Not Tulsi Gabbard, because Tulsi Gabbard's name came up in the news.
Yeah.
She's the Director of National Intelligence, different from National Cyber. Very different role.
So the first National Cyber Director was Chris Inglis.
Yes.
He came from NSA, former NSA director or something or other. The second one was Harry Coker, retired Navy captain, admiral, I don't know, retired Navy. Spent a lot of years at CIA, spent a lot of years, several years at NSA. And then this guy, Sean Cairncross, was formerly the head of the Republican National Committee, I believe.
Interesting.
So I question his qualifications, but aside from that,
right. But this. So is this a position you're saying Sean does not necessarily, no knock on it, I'm just stating the facts, does not have a background in cybersecurity?
He does not have a background in. Now, ironically, the person that's been nominated to replace Jen Easterly at CISA,
yeah, I remember you said that last week,
also named Sean.
Sean. Yep.
And that guy has a really deep, long cybersecurity pedigree.
Good.
This guy does not. But take that for what it is. There might be a few people that have questionable qualifications in positions of authority in our government right now.
Right, because that's never happened before.
Never happened before. But I think I summarized in my notes what the 6 pillars are, just for ease.
Oh, I just took the one sensational headline that said that has Sean saying less regulation, more cooperation.
Yep.
Now, obviously, I'm pulling it out of context, and if you noodle on that on your brain and like look into those words, my shit detector goes off. Right. But again, I'm just pulling this one small.
So yeah, it's 2 of my stories that talk about this. The 6 pillars, which I had seen articles about this back in December, but nobody was saying what all 6 were. There's a draft out. I have not found the draft yet, but they are. This is the new pillars, 6 pillars of the new national cyber strategy. Shaping adversary behavior, whatever that means. Focus on the regulatory environment, which is the screaming headline. Securing and modernizing the federal government, securing critical infrastructure, and maintaining U.S. dominance in emerging technologies, and closing cybersecurity skills and workforce gaps.
Okay. I don't disagree with all those necessarily. Some of them require, I think, more.
Well, except for. Well, go up to my story number 3. What are we talking about in terms of relaxing regulation? We're talking about things like
isn't that at odds with
HIPAA,
with
GLBA, FISMA, NIST Cybersecurity Framework, the CISA, CCPA, and too bad Josh isn't here tonight, CMMC.
Yeah, but this is when I now that you've summarized all that for us, Jeff, thank you for that. But it speaks to me like very much like a partisan issue, in that Republicans lean towards less regulation, right? Democrats tend to lean towards more regulation. In my mind, talk about the context even of just cyber, right? But everything else aside, just cyber, the answer is usually somewhere in between, right? Yeah. Like I think the best answer is good and smart regulation, which we don't often get, right? We either get like a lot of regulation or no regulation at all. And I think the extremes on that spectrum don't work. The answer is somewhere in between, but the in-between answer has to have really good teeth, and it has to have intelligence behind it.
I agree, and I disagree, Paul. And this has in one way, shape, or form been a topic of discussion forever in our business.
Yeah, it has. Yes.
I can remember the first couple of years I was going to all the hacker conferences, and of course I'm talking about PCI, which very loosely let's say lumps under this idea of regulation. Somebody telling me I got to do something, be secure to some
I agree.
standard.
No, you're right.
And then bad things happened over the last couple of years. Egregious things have happened, egregious vulnerabilities discovered, egregious breaches, and you have these heart-to-heart conversations with people, and all the influencers and really smart people that are out there talking about this stuff. The ones that were last week saying, we got to keep the government out of everything, there's too much regulation, they're like, I don't know how to fix this other than regulation. So it's a very double-edged sword. But regulation in cybersecurity, at least the ones that were listed in this article, have to do with providing security baselines.
Yeah.
Most of us talk about bare minimums. How does my question is, how does ripping that out and relaxing that increased security.
It's interesting. When we interviewed Cory Doctorow a long time ago on the show,
That was years ago.
it was a pivotal moment in my mind and matured my thinking about regulation, because I was like, Cory, I'm opposed to any regulation because largely they've been stupid. Larry, you were here for this, right?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think I was, but I was thinking in my mind 20 years ago when we started this podcast, we were so punk rock, like keep the government out of our computer security. And now it's like, hey, maybe the government being involved a little bit to give us some regulations to set some bare minimums, or maybe even a little bit better.
Set me straight. Cory's a wonderful individual and so smart. His latest book on the enshittification of social media and the internet is freaking amazing, right? Obviously, like there's no other reason for me to say that other than that I've been impressed hearing him talk on other podcasts about it. I have not read the book. He did write a book about it, and I haven't read it yet, but I've heard him on a podcast. Amazing.
Right.
But Cory was the one when we interviewed him years ago that kind of flipped it. Like I told him, like, I don't like regulation because usually they get it wrong. And he's like, Paul, regulation has done extremely positive things when done correctly. And if you don't have a voice in people like you and others that have knowledge in whatever subject matter we're proposing regulation, if you don't have a voice, you're going to get shitty regulation. And I think Bruce Schneier said similar kind of things, right? And that was like the turning point for me to go back to Larry's point of like, screw the system, rage against the machine. I don't want any government oversight, to, well, it does make sense. If we can do it in a very smart manner, it can advance us as a society, help solve problems. I think the problem with that is we get crappy legislation that is primarily fueled by politicians appealing to their base. I think is the number one
and
problem.
or misguided and or out of date.
Agreed.
Because it takes if I may pontificate for a moment.
Let's pontificate. I love that word too.
I was you recall a couple years ago, you during the lockdown, you joined a virtual happy hour called WeDram.
Yes.
It's still going. There was a ugly divorce, and now there's 2 WeDrams, but the one has been rebranded as Vigilant
That happens
Forum.
so often.
And I was on the Vigilant Forum last night because there was a topic that I wanted to hear about. A gentleman that's a retired Navy admiral named Mark Montgomery. He's a very, very enthusiastic, passionate, emotional driver trying to force, that's a poor choice of words, trying to push the creation of a new branch of the military called Cyber Force. His contention is we need to have a separate force that is totally dedicated, not everybody else having little pieces here and there. I agree with that,
but that's not cyber. That's not Cyber Command.
Not Cyber Command. And I don't want to go too far off the rails on this, but I was on that, listening to his basically pitch last night, and somebody else that's involved in it will be on next week. I'm going to go on, but I have bias coming out of the government when I did sort of at the beginning of this whole internet age. My one bias is everybody that was good and competent left the government. So I have this bias that everybody that stayed behind is sort of the second string or couldn't get a job in the real world. But there was somebody this is the point I'm trying to make. There was somebody last night that made the comment about, hey, I'm glad you're talking about this because it'll probably take 10 years to happen. And we've been talking about this for 10 years. And I'm in the chat going, and it's been a problem for 40 years. So, my point being, there's a lot of reasons to hate regulation. PCI came about because at the time it was formed over 20 years ago, Visa, for one, was a private company and did not want the government in their shorts. They didn't, at the time, they didn't have to file with the SEC and show all their, profits and losses, goings on. So there was an early motivation. You won't find this written down anywhere, but it's sort of known within the community that it was, trying to keep the government regulation away. So it was self-regulated, and of course, it's hated as much as government regulation,
I
but
don't know about that.
it's also made an impact. And for the 30 years that I've been in the private sector, the vast majority of companies that I've worked with before and after PCI came along, they're only doing enough security to get by. They don't really understand it. They don't really want to think about it. They just want to do the bare minimum to not get fined, not get in trouble, not, when the breach happens, be, blasted in the media for being totally irresponsible. No more, no less. Unless and until they get breached, and then they get religion, and then they do a whole bunch of stuff. But other than PCI, that's forced them to do things, most of them wouldn't have done it. And I keep looking for that in any other segment of our society outside of the PCI spectrum, which is pretty all encompassing when you stop and think about it. And I'm not seeing it. So my skepticism of the six pillars and calling for less regulation is, we don't have enough regulation as it is, because regulation is the only thing that's going to ever make a difference. And I've thought about this all day since I posted the articles this morning, and I could be completely off, but in the private sector, cybersecurity is all a money game. It's all a financial business risk decision. I think the proposal is to dangle a carrot. We will relax regulation if you'll do the other things we're asking for, like cooperation and share data, and it might be written between the lines, help us out because we can't do it. That's my take on it.
You've totally flipped my viewpoint now, Jeff. I just want to point out a couple of things. One, you say PCI like I'm enthusiastic about firmware in UEFI as the first point. That's totally positive, by the way. We all have our passions. It's great. Right. But what's amazing about what you're saying, Jeff, and I'm going to back you up on this, is that the payment card industry did such a great job of regulating themselves. They were able to thwart any U.S. government intervention and regulation. And that, to me, should be a model for so many other areas, right? Like if we had been able to, let's just take healthcare, for example. If we'd been able to regulate ourselves within healthcare.
You like hip hop? Isn't there an old movie called Do the Right Thing?
There is. Yeah. Spike Lee.
It's a
great movie. And what's interesting, like in healthcare, right? We had to lean on the FDA to put those hard and fast regulations to make people do things to be more secure and resilient. But PCI, we didn't have to do that because they were able to self-regulate. That's it, and it's a great model. And you say people still poo-poo PCI. I'm not sure how you could have that viewpoint today with everything we've talked about, Jeff, in the past 20 something years, where I'm not sure when you first came on the show and started talking about PCI, right?
10 years.
Early days, we're all kind of still poo-pooing it.
Right.
And then,
but you came around.
You came after around. Listening to you, after reading certain books and works, I'm like, no, they're doing a great job of regulating themselves to keep the government out. If only we could do that with things like network edge appliances or so many other things, but also, depending on who's in office, right, kind of dictates how much the government gets involved in certain areas. I think it's kind of fascinating that government gets more involved in some areas, but not others, depending on, the way the political tides are turning.
So I have to tell a story on myself, Paul.
All right, tell a story. And then I want to segue into the relaxed Trump administration regulations on supply chain.
Oh, you mean the one we talked about last week?
Oh, you did talk about that last week.
You guessed successfully.
I listened to most of the episode. I didn't finish the final.
Do you have a quickie, Lee, before I tell my story?
No, I want to comment on this regulation.
So I mentioned that I know the first two national cyber directors. I don't know Chris Inglis very well, but he lives 20 minutes away from me, and we've been trying to meet up for lunch.
Yeah, you guys should hang out.
Harry Coker, I've gotten to know pretty well. I met him first at Ron Gula's house, and he's a cigar smoker. And we said, and this is probably 3 years ago, 3 years ago, hey, we need to get together and smoke cigars sometime. Didn't happen. Finally met up with them at a cigar cruise at the Gartner conference, which I think was 2 years ago. Again, a Gula event. And he had finally gotten approved and was in his position as national cyber director. And I didn't really know him well at that point. We hadn't really talked at all. But everybody that I knew that knew him were like, oh, the guy's just amazing. He's so smart. He's just a genius, which I always take as sort of a challenge because, that's the way I am.
That's a hacker mindset, Jeff.
So, we finally were having a cigar. We're on the top of this boat. We're on the Potomac floating around. And I said, so, how are things going at the new job now that you're finally in it? And he says, well, it's okay, but I'm kind of surprised at how political the position is. And I said, are you stupid? And my wife was right next to me, and she's like slapping me. You can't say that.
Yeah.
This is Harry Coker.
Kicking you under the tail.
And Harry Coker's like, no, he's right. I was stupid. And we've been friends ever since.
I love it.
Anyway, go ahead.
He needed the curmudgeon, might not be needed. He was already there, right? But yeah.
I mean, it
was reinforcement
it's
for what he was experiencing.
That everything in government is political these days. It's always been that way, including cybersecurity. But
almost like back to Larry's point about raging against the machine. Like I would get so upset at ridiculously stupid laws, like laws that, in my opinion, are so stupid until there was a point in my life, I'm not sure when it was, that I learned about like appealing to your base, right? And how some of the fundamental ways that politics worked. And then it kind of all clicked and it made sense. I'm like, oh, the law doesn't have to make sense to everyone. The law just has to make sense to your base of voters that are going to vote for you the next time, and or your political affiliation. I'm like, oh, now so many laws like make perfect sense. What I'm lacking is now how do we rage against that machine, right? How do we bring common sense back to it? And it's hard. Politics are hard to navigate. And all other things aside, like we're focused on cybersecurity here. It hits us hardcore in cybersecurity because we've seen good laws, bad laws, ridiculous laws in not just this country, but other countries as well. I think we can all recall the law in Germany.
Yep,
they tried to ban all hacking tools.
The anti-hacking law.
Until
they updated
think about that today. Like, what could be a hacking tool? Good Lord, it could be.
Or when PGP was first written, trying to prosecute Zimmerman for exporting munitions outside of the country.
So I wanted to back up on the regulation thing a second, because I also spent a lot of time in the federal government.
And I don't mean to imply, Lee, that you're a second-class citizen. But
I may still be.
I kind of think that a little bit.
But
we would never classify you as that, Lee.
But the control catalog, the old NIST 853, has grown over the years, and with a lot of work on Ron Ross and his team's part, to encompass new controls for new technology and stuff that gets out there. And you have these baselines that range from about 180 to 390, 400 controls.
How many organizations that actually meet all of it?
Well, so here's the thing, because I don't know the answer to that question. What's in there? There's two things that people forget. One is there's a tailoring guide. You can tailor controls that don't apply out. For example, the control about knowing where the water shutoff is for your data center doesn't apply when it's not your data center. You've outsourced that. In fact, there are a bunch of physical and environmental controls that you've outsourced.
Well, that's a great example of risk transfer.
Right. Well, yes. But in terms of, I was thinking about, tailoring, and there is a tailoring guide out there. There's also overlays for example, for IT, OT systems, 883 overlays the controls that talks about what matters and what doesn't matter. So you cut the control catalogs way down, but people forget. They look at this huge document and think, I got to do all of it. And you don't. And so I'm saying sometimes the response to regulatory is self-inflicted if you don't understand how you can back off a little bit. I had an authorizing official that wanted every control in 853 addressed, and a story about anyone we weren't doing.
You're bringing up a great point, Lee, and I have hated 853 since the first time I was exposed to it. For reasons that touch on what you're describing, there are absolutely ways to basically NIST 853 and all its affiliated stuff gives you everything in the kitchen sink of here's how you need to secure your environment. There's an expectation that somebody takes that and reads it and is able to interpret it into your organization and say, oh, well, this doesn't matter. This doesn't matter. This doesn't apply. This doesn't apply. That's assuming that there's somebody that knows something and knows the environment and knows security in the organization. In my experience, that's a huge stretch, that there isn't often somebody that does that. What I more commonly see is, which is sort of at the heart of this regulation question or not, it's and it's sort of, it's encapsulated in what people call the checkbox approach. But most people, when you get right down to it, they don't want to have to think about it. They don't want to make difficult decisions. They don't want to be put on the spot and have to make a judgment call because they might be wrong. Just tell me what I need to do. Just show me what I need to do so I can check the box and I don't have to think about it. What's missing collectively, and there's exceptions to all this, is the person or individuals or group or team that does take on the responsibility of doing the thinking and making the difficult decisions and taking it on the chin if they make a wrong decision, or it's the right decision, but something still happened.
So I don't want to belabor the story forever because I could, but you've hit on a bunch of good stuff, Jeff. And I went through a process several times because with each rev of 853, you kind of have to go through to take and explain to others what the intent of each control is, and to talk about what we were already doing that might meet that control that we just have to prove we're doing, or that we might have to tweak slightly, because the average, IT guy or gal is coming in going, holy crap, how the hell do we do that? We're never going to do whatever. It blows their mind.
But that's smart compliance, Lee. And props to you for having the wisdom, knowledge, and experience to be able to convey that, which makes me kind of sad that you retired now, because they lost that wisdom, knowledge, and experience to go.
They've reverted to the default password already. I just know it.
This is what compliance really means. Like you articulated so well what compliance really means, right? And we just need to continue to educate, on that front.
And the best part about controls that they're kind of already doing is it's like they feel like, oh, I've been doing this right. It's like
yes,
but
there's
this
a
thing
positive,
you have looks evil, but I'm meeting it. Yeah, well, they feel.
But also,
good.
It's a positive if you go, oh, we don't have a control for that. Like, let's go build one. That's just
right.
I think the purpose of compliance, right, is one of the goals is you build those controls, you build technology, processes, in people around building those controls, right? If you don't have that, you got to go build it, right? In some of the other aspects, you might already have that and not know it, and it's only someone like yourself and others that are smart about compliance to know the difference between the two and guide the organization.
And what's worse,
so Lee, let me ask you the tailored question.
Right, God forbid we end up in teamwork, right?
So you had the responsibility and the capability, and you had the opportunity to tailor and talk to people about the compensating control. Did you get your point? Did you get your organization to 100% for what was applicable compliance with 853?
So I'm gonna.
That's not a yes.
Wait. I'm not saying no. But I feel if I say 100%, you can pick that apart. But I'm saying we got to compliance. And we were able to get the few things we had to do, plans of action and milestones, POAMs, which we used to call a corrective action plan, and get all the controls addressed.
But oftentimes in a lot of those controls, something is better than nothing. And the something is never perfect. And there's varying degrees of that.
Yeah.
But
like
zero
boundaries.
controls versus zero.
It's better to
controls
have
versus
a
some controls
boundary, even
yeah.
though there really isn't a
And-
boundary.
Yeah,
By the
or
way, there was-
even
it's a
awareness,
boundary.
even awareness and monitoring, right, is a form of control, right? And maybe not the best control, but awareness and monitoring. We're lacking in like effective controls in this area, but we're going to increase monitoring and response. To me, that's a valid response. Whereas if you had no idea about that particular scenario and you did nothing and you had no monitoring and visibility, that's the worst case scenario. I think compliance is really about getting people out of the worst case scenario, right? Maybe it's not the best, maybe it's not perfect scenario, but getting them out of the worst case scenario, I think, is where regulations
think
like
ultimately,
the NIST 853, PCI have done great things.
I think ultimately, Paul, it's the analogy of outrunning the bear or outrunning your friends.
And yeah,
the ideal is you want the bad guys
Yeah.
to say, this looks like it's going to be really complicated. Let me move on to the next one. It does not address a targeted adversary going after you.
Agreed.
Well, and by the way, we know compliance doesn't address every bit of security. It just addresses compliance.
But PCI does.
Really good. Well, I was trying to
sorry. You guys talked last week about the rescinding the Biden era. Yeah.
We should move on because we'll keep going.
Yeah.
All right. But I did want to make one last comment. One last comment.
Go ahead, Lee.
We were also in the room with the auditors, with the IT guys, to help guide the conversation so they didn't get a fail because they didn't understand the audit question.
Where were the business guys? Where were
they were also in the room.
Guys? Okay.
They were in the room with us.
Security is not an IT problem.
No, but I felt our job was to interpret the security requirements and to help. They talk about what they're doing, but they may not know what the auditor is looking for when we, So I'm trying to say we partnered.
Go ahead.
Let's move on.
Move us on.
Yeah, I just want to talk about a positive story that.
Yeah.
Is it a positive?
We have
story?
A positive story in here.
I'm going to put an asterisk on that one. It was not a positive story when it first broke.
I know where you're going with this one.
I still don't think it's like a positive thing, but it's kind of like retribution. Some retribution has been made, and
restitution.
We shouldn't have been in this situation in the first place. I think is my whole thing about it being positive, right? So, but the headline reads: County pays $600,000 to pen testers it arrested for assessing courthouse security. We interviewed both parties, or what? I think it was both DiMercurio and Wynn.
I was going to say, who did we interview? I knew we interviewed one of them.
They were working for Coalfire at the time. Yep. Many remember the story about the pen test that went wrong. I won't belabor the details. We covered that on previous shows, and there's a link in my story number 19 about that. But what's happening? The legal process goes very slowly, right? Because this story broke several years ago. And from my understanding, what happened is, I don't know if both or one, DiMercurio and Wynn, both the people affected by this particular case, that the TLDR, for those that may not be familiar with the case, is they did a pen test. They had a permission slip signed, like we always say. They were doing a physical, plus kind of pen test. They accessed a courthouse facility. And there were others that were part of the sheriff's office that did not recognize their permission slip. The pen testers were arrested. They were incarcerated for roughly 24 hours. And again, we interviewed them on the show about that whole experience and the repercussions and the changes we need to make as an industry around that.
My recollection was
go ahead,
it was like it was really a pissing contest between two different law enforcement agencies.
Yep.
And they got kind of caught in the crosshairs.
Yep.
But the good news now, years later, lawsuits have been pending since then.
Yeah, Wynn Mercurio sued for false imprisonment and all sorts of other stuff.
Yeah, so I can tell you what they sued for. So, because this, I think, is a very important point to the story. They answer some questions that myself and Bill had as well. DiMercurio and Wynn sued Dallas County and Leonard for false arrest abusive process, defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and malicious prosecution. Those are what they sued for. Amazing list of things, right? The case dragged on for years, as I said. That's what the story see. And they said last Thursday, I don't know when this was published, but 5 days before trial was scheduled to begin, they reached a settlement. Dallas County officials agreed to pay $600,000 to settle the case. Now, the way that this was reported in this article comes from Ars Technica is that D. Mercurio and Wynn sued Dallas County. Dallas County settled and paid the two individuals, is the way I read that, the $600,000. I did not see Coalfire. They were working for Coalfire at the time. But by the way, it's a great company. No knock on them. They did great work to protect their employees. They were super supportive. No shade on them whatsoever.
They were super supportive. Great company. Yeah. Like any security company.
I don't have.
They're competitors. They do PCI, so I have to say.
Okay, I mean, so let's put that out there. That's fine. But again, in following this story and interviewing the people, Coalfire to me acted in a very ethical manner, in a very supportive manner of their employees.
I would absolutely agree with that statement. They did.
It's so much so that maybe they said,
people.
So much so, maybe they said, like, look, if you guys want to pursue legal ramifications, you guys go do that on your own. And if you win, you get all of the settlement money, which is what I hope would happen, which is kind of what it sounds like. I haven't gone and read the court documents to support that, but that was what, Bill Swearinger and I were kind of debating was, wait, who got, did they have to split the settlement with Coalfire? Did Coalfire get some, or what was? To me, this reads as the individual.
Paul, 600,000 isn't much considering this happened. 5 years ago at least?
No, I agree, Jeff. I agree.
So splitting it in half, that's 300,000. Well, before you split it, you got to subtract out the lawyer fees, which is, tell me what they are. 10, 20, 30%. So let's say it's 500,000. Split it between the two of them, it's $250 each. $50,000 a year, assuming they couldn't work and do pen testing and do their livelihood after this.
Do they get into one lump sum? Do you pay capital gains on that settlement money? Is that a tax? That's a tax question. I don't know the answer to be honest with you.
That's a great question.
Does it depend on what kind of settlement it is and what the circumstance? I don't know that's a tax.
We haven't had a lawyer on the show lately. We should bring him on.
In this case, we need an accountant on the show to talk about that. I'm not sure what applies for that and what the circumstances. There's obviously nuances. I don't think it's a binary 0 or 1 kind of answer. It could be, maybe, I don't know. But in any case, I don't know if both of the pen testers or one of them have gone independent. So my hope is that they settled this case, they got some money. They can funnel some money back into their business and continue to be great pen testers because they were great guys. When we met with them, I thought they were awesome people, and I respect and appreciate them to this day.
Lee, you look like you had a comment.
I had 3 things. Just to clarify the dates. They were arrested in 2019.
Yep.
The settlement, the Thursday was the 22nd of January, and the trial that it circumvented was for the 26th, which was the following Monday.
Yeah.
Okay. And the one thing that some of us like me were hoping for, and I saw some other commentaries about this, is that this would also include clearing their records. And that, I believe, did not happen. I really wish it had, because that's worth way more than the settlement to have their records clear. Because if somebody's doing a background check on them and all this kind of stuff.
I hate to have them lose out. I agree, Lee. I hate to have them lose out on potential contracts because of this incident, right? That their records haven't been cleared potentially.
That's exactly where I'm coming from.
Yep.
But only those in the know, those in the know would look that up and go, oh, I remember that case. I'm not even counting that. I wouldn't count that. If I was hiring either one of these guys and was forced to do a background check, I'd go if it was my company.
But the background investigating firms are using AI these days, so they're just reporting the facts.
But it's 100%, right? If I own the company and I get this report and I know this case, I'm like, screw that. I don't even care. I'm going to create a policy. I'm going to make an exception. Yeah. But if I work for a company, I can advocate for an exception and explain the circumstances, but it could be corporate policy that prevents that company from engaging with these two people because they have a criminal record.
And right from the article, it does say eventually all the charges were dismissed. The fact that they were still charged and they were still arrested is likely still on their record. And
It's
they should,
reputation.
and
Yeah,
they
it's
should be
still,
getting that
yeah.
expunged, like immediately expunged.
I would
Yeah.
hope that they could get that expunged.
Yeah.
But
And-
to
and-
some
and if
degree,
you're
Larry,
hiring-
that
Look,
doesn't
if you're,
matter.
I'm just going to
'cause
put it
it's-
publicly. If you're hiring these guys, they're great guys.
Yeah.
You got to go
Don't
read
hesitate.
the whole story.
Yeah. Clearly, and right from D. Mercurio, right at the end of this article here that you were reading, Paul, the settlement confirms what we have said from the beginning. Our work was authorized, professional, and done in the public interest. What happened to us never should have happened. Being arrested for doing the job we were hired to do turned our lives upside down and damaged reputation we spent years building. Like that's vindication
ding.
right there.
Well,
Vindication.
one thing I had much sympathy for was the fact that they had spent 20 plus hours in jail. Like that sucks, right? Like
Mhm.
a lot of shit about this.
I don't
story
know.
sucks.
I've never spent
Yeah.
20 hours in jail.
Well, there's actually another good point that came out of this, and that is most of us in the pen test game really tightened up our engagement contracts.
Oh, 100%.
Because there was some slop in them, and
Yeah,
it's
but I hate
we're
to- but,
humans.
like,
It's okay, but
I
now
know,
they're
but
much
like,
tighter.
I feel like people shouldn't have suffered
Oh no, I
to
don't.
get to
I-
that point. You know what I mean?
We're in violent
I mean,
agreement,
everyone-
Paul.
yeah, I think a lot of people agree with
I've
us.
got
right? Like,
stories, but I don't want to belabor it. I really don't want to belabor it, but I don't want to bogart the microphone. I don't often.
Oh,
I don't
it's fine. We can move on.
often.
I mean,
I don't
think we said
often
all.
post stories about vulnerabilities, but I did happen to spot one. My story number 2 about Chrome. Well, two Chrome vulnerabilities were
No.
disclosed.
Now here I am. I was saying in my day job today that one reason why attackers may be going or are going after network edge devices versus the endpoints is because browser security has improved so much in the
Mhm.
past 20 years.
Mhm.
Now, my point of reference for that I was making on my internal meeting today was we had my new boss, actually, who's awesome. Now I'm brown nosing live on the air, but he was talking about the ActiveX vulnerabilities in Internet Explorer.
Mhm.
And I'm like, wasn't there like an HD More thing where there was like a day of ActiveX vulnerabilities for like 60 days or something like that? I remember something about that. And there was so many vulnerabilities in, I want to say it was ActiveX, but it might have been some other browser technology in Internet Explorer. Again, points mute. But there were so many vulnerabilities in particular browser technology that Microsoft ended up dropping support for it, right? I think that was ActiveX. It could have been something else. But I also thought back to, remember Flash, Adobe Flash in browsers and how many vulnerabilities we had, right? So like there was a point in time where if you could convince someone to click on a link, you could execute a exploit of a vulnerability in a browser and gain control of execution in that person's computer system. To me, that's much harder today. And one of the driving factors behind, I'm just going to go find some network edge device on that company's network to exploit, rather than social engineering someone, getting them to click on a link and exploiting the browser. But Jeff, you kind of, I don't really want to say you blew that out of the water, but also you point out that browsers still do have vulnerabilities that we need to be mindful of, even if it's harder to exploit vulnerabilities in a browser today because of all the protections that Google, for example, has built into Chrome that we've covered over the years.
Well, and I started off my first 2 stories were bashing Google inadvertently. I didn't set out to do that. Well, not bashing. The first one, well, it's kind of bashing. The first one was about the Google engineer that got convicted of espionage. And then there was this one on the vulnerabilities. But the one about the vulnerabilities, it was sort of a tongue-in-cheek question, but the more I thought about it, the more I thought, no, this is kind of a legitimate question. What's worse, arbitrary code execution or denial of service?
It depends, is my answer to that.
Yeah, I figured that's going to be the answer.
It depends. I think, well, arbitrary code execution is almost always bad, right? I think we can all agree that that's bad. Denial of service, that level of bad depends on the technology it's targeting and the target, right?
No, I agree. It is
There's certain circumstances, like oftentimes I'll kind of dismiss the denial of service aspect of it, but when it hits things like critical infrastructure, critical services, DNS, a number of different technologies where availability and uptime is so important, then denial of service to me is a really serious finding. In Chrome, maybe. I think we can debate that. Sam?
Jeff, I have a simple answer. Code execution includes denial of service.
Yeah, it's true. If I can't code execution, I can execute denial of service 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of ties us to the power grid attack from Russia to Poland. Now, here's a clear... So I think this is the scenario that I was actually thinking of since it's in our stories for this week, right? Here's a case where denial of service has a huge impact in this particular attack, right? Denying access, taking down systems due to denial of service when it affects the power grid, certainly. And to your point, Sam, right? Code execution, if I can gain code execution on the right systems, now I can impact the power grid.
Yeah.
And it says like allegedly Russia hacked into these things and did the power. Like I think it's pretty clear, what happened in this particular case. ESET has some pretty extensive documentation and evidence of what happened. Like, what do they call the Dyno wiper? And went through that. ESET did a great job of doing that. And if you think of the motivations behind it, right? I think it's an interesting debate. So there's two parts of the wiper malware on the Polish energy grid. The first is the one that I wanted to kind of debate. So the quote from the article is, "There's no indication how or why Dyno wiper failed to take out power," because it did fail, right? It wasn't successful. It says it's possible Russia planned it to do so in an attempt to send a message without provoking Polish allies, which is like a political play. Like, hey, by the way, we as Russia, we could take out Poland's like power grid, and you need to recognize us for that. The other possibility is that cyber defenses prevented the wiper from working as intended. I'm kind of leaning towards the former rather than the latter. I don't know. Maybe it's just the curmudgeon in me, where I'm like, any system can fall. That Russia did so to kind of just prove a point. What's your guys' thought?
Well, one thing I know is the entry point was a FortiGate vulnerability.
Yeah, that's the other interesting thing that that's my kind of current research project right now is looking at specifically FortiGate, VPN firewall devices. And I should say the focus is that combination of VPN firewall device, right? Because there's a very storied history of how beneficial to an attacker it is to take control of not just an edge device that's doing firewall stuff, but also VPN stuff. Because what they get from VPN stuff is two things. One, it's potentially credentials into Active Directory. And two, it's a pivot point into the internal network. So getting a little more technical, I don't need necessarily code execution on the device. If I can log into the device like anyone would into the admin interface, I can do things that give myself access, right? I can create a VPN account for myself, use that to pivot into the internal network. I think better for an attacker if I can compromise the VPN firewall appliance and scrape everyone's password that's going through it. Now I've got credentials to Active Directory, and then I can pivot into the environment. And so this attack, as documented by the Polish CERT, was exposed FortiGate VPN firewall devices without multi-factor authentication. Attackers used statically defined accounts with reused credentials. They don't say whether that was an administrative login or whether that was a VPN login. it doesn't really matter. It's kind of interesting as I look at the FortiGate appliance. Like I can log in as a user and in the web interface, like go initiate RDP connections to things because I'm on the SSL VPN right from the web interface on the FortiGate device, which is I was kind of blown away when I discovered that today. I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. So they use credential reuse and obtained administrative access to FortiGate devices, reset devices to erase forensic evidence, compromise FortiGate as a pivot point, right? So that's what's happening here. And I'm not picking on Fortinet because Ivanti, Palo Alto, and several others all have the same problems.
I mean, you should pick on all of them.
Well, and they've all had. Look, I'm not picking necessarily, Larry. I'm just stating the fact. There have been attacker campaigns that have done the same thing to a lot of these other manufacturers.
I think it comes back to the days of using remote access without multi-factor have to be behind us, and exposing management interfaces to the internet. And it doesn't matter who your manufacturer is.
Well, it's not even. I agree. The management interfaces on the internet, bad.
Yeah.
Why I like and why attackers I think like to pick on these particular devices that have a VPN capability is that you have to expose the VPN endpoint, whether that's IPsec, whether that's SSL, to the internet at large, right? That's the whole thing with a virtual private network,
right?
Is I, as an employee, I can be anywhere in the world. As long as I can connect to the internet, I can connect to that device. So by nature, I have to expose my device to threat actors, legitimate users, and everyone else on the internet. And that just opens up my attack surface. And I don't think we should all be wondering why attackers are going after these targets. Is because they're on the internet and they need to be on the internet to provide the function to my organization.
Yeah. But there's still, and Jeff's right. I mean, sometimes for VPN, it's not full multi-factor. It's just a second factor. Sometimes it is a full multi-factor authentication. I mean, I've done VPN.
Whoa. What's the difference, Lee?
A second factor might be an RSA token, which you have popped with a pin into the password field, as opposed to entering a username, password, and a token. I'm just saying there are different degrees of rigor, but a non-static password by itself is still an improvement. But I've also used HPS PD12 certificate-based VPN as well, which is interesting. Not interesting from the VPN. It's not everybody. It turns out it's harder than you'd think to get people to use certificate-based logins for things.
Is that like a smart card?
Yeah, it's a smart card. It's just that's the government defined one. But yeah, I could have said using your YubiKey in certificate mode, which is very cool. But I said I don't want to split the difference. But not a reusable password is already huge. And the other sore point I find is that, well, we all have a second or more factor authentication, except Bob. We trust Bob with his password.
Oh yeah, I've seen that so many times, Lee.
Sorry,
so
Bob.
Many times.
Yeah. But
Bob is usually like the CEO or some high level executive,
right? And so that's why I'll say comprehensive or all when if you see me talking about this, you've got to get everybody. I at one point I worked in an organization where the passwords for VPN were not Active Directory passwords, just completely separate password set to manage.
Oh, good. So they didn't have to follow the rules.
Well, no, they were implemented the same standard as their other passwords.
Sure, they were.
Yeah, they were. I saw the logic. It was. But the problem is that people sorted out having more passwords to manage. So eventually they had to, but stronger multi-factor authentication helped.
That's where password vaults are really handy. where you don't have to know your password anymore. You just look it up from the vault, which technically violates the multi-factor or two-factor standard.
Well, it
Because
violates
it's not something, the
non-reversible.
password is not something you know anymore. It's something you have.
Well, and there's also a bunch of
think
rules
about it.
not storing passwords in clear text or in reversible form.
Yeah, and in the early days, we said don't write them down. And now I'm like, yeah, I'm going to write my daggone password down.
Yeah. They got to compromise my webcam.
Larry,
Anyway.
did you see my story number 14?
I did not.
So, Ukraine has tightened controls on the Starlink terminals to counter Russian drones. I was intrigued by this story, and when I read deeper, it's basically, so I'm going to quote here, Ukraine and SpaceX have implemented emergency technical measures in Ukraine that block unauthorized Starlink terminals on Russian drones, including posting a speed limit on receivers so high-speed attack UAVs can no longer be reliably controlled. So they're rolling out a registration and verification system so only authorized Ukrainian registered Starlink terminals will function in the country, and all other ones will kind of drop off or be terminated. So what they're trying to create is effectively like a system of trust where if it's a legitimate device, you have to register it so we know what runs the country and the infrastructure. Anything else is almost considered like a rogue access point, like we're just going to take it down, right? And that's how they're policing the airwaves to make sure that when Russian drones, for example, come in, if they're using Starlink, that they're not able to communicate back to the mothership because they're like, well, you're communicating with a Starlink device that doesn't belong to Ukraine, so therefore you're unauthorized. Screw you. You need to drop out of the sky. Maybe not drop out of the sky, but I don't know what happens necessarily to a drone that they can't communicate in this particular scenario, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would think they lose telemetry or whatever. I'm sure they have other anti-drone countermeasures in place.
Oh,
But
for
this,
sure.
This is part of they absolutely do, right? I think that's Mikko Hipponen's new thing is he's working for an anti-drone the security company.
Miko.
Today.
I thought he retired and then he just found
No,
a new
well,
gig. Because he was
retired-
at F-Secure for
F-Secure for
30
20
years or something?
Yeah, 30 years, right? And now he's working for does he live in Poland or Finland? He's Finland, right? He's Finland.
Finland.
Yeah,
And
Finland.
Finland shares a border with Russia. He was on the Three Buddy Problem podcast and was talking
Also
about this.
Denmark,
Fascinating.
which is, who's in charge of Greenland. We don't want to
That would be Denmark,
That's what I said. They're
which I was
neighbors to Denmark, Finland.
I was aware of that not that long ago. I think many of us were, right? We're like, I don't know, Greenland. I didn't know Finland had a border with Russia.
The most
We tend to live in
fascinating
this
part
bubble.
about it is you look on a map and Greenland looks like it's bigger than the continental U.S.
Right.
But if you look at it on a globe, it's like Texas.
Right.
Objects in mirror are smaller than they appear. Wait.
So I thought it was kind of interesting that but you have to preserve the registration system, right? The integrity of the registration system is what's helping police the airspace basically in Ukraine. Larry, I don't know if you have thoughts on this. Kind of interesting.
Say that last part one more time.
So Ukraine is policing the airspace, basically, right? Like registration versus non-registration. It's an interesting tactic. Like Russians basically forced their hand to do this.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of interesting that it's really only going to be one of the methods that they're going to be able to use to fix the drone problem. Because some of the stuff they'll modify to not match the signatures for commercially available stuff. And will go under. You're also going to see the ones that aren't subject to some of this type of stuff, which is absolutely crazy.
Fiber cable? I want to see some of the drones use fiber cables, right?
Yeah. So, and I wish I could find this picture, but our good friend Mike Poor sent me a picture, maybe a year ago, and it was a picture, and it had like all these crisscross lines, and I'm like, what the hell is that? Is that like the power grid in India? He says, no, those are all the abandoned fiber cables from the drones in Ukraine.
Right.
And I'm like, whoa.
It's a fiber connected drone So rather than relying on any kind of radio communications, they attach a fiber cable to the drone.
Because it can't be jammed.
Yeah. And
It's like
small,
a toy I
think it's
had when I
smaller.
was a kid that was a helicopter that would fly around on an arm.
So,
What was that
Right.
called?
Does that mean I
Vertibird
could
or
go
something
around
like
the
that?
Ukraine and pick up a lot of fiber that I could then recycle for money?
I find the older I
fiber
get,
doesn't
the more
recycle as
fiber
well
I
as
need to
copper.
have in my
Because there's no
diet.
copper in it. So it's not Ethernet.
Talk
right?
about living in a glass house.
It is
Yeah.
glass, right?
We probably could have gone all night without my saying that.
It's all right. It's all right. You said it. It's over now.
Oh, let's talk about residential proxies. Jeff, you had me add my story number 13.
Yeah,
where
thank
Google
you for
disrupted the
adding that
world's-
because
yeah.
I thought this was an interesting article.
100%. Like the residential proxy thing is becoming more. It goes back to me personally from like a talk at BrewCon I gave in 2010-ish time frame, where I talked about before it was the Internet of Things, we called them embedded devices. Now you could use those to take over the world. And much like the movie Idiocracy, like so many things from that talk are coming true today.
You know, you're getting old when all your cultural references are 10, 15, 20 years old. Just
True.
saying.
Yeah.
Just
True,
saying.
man. It's a sign of
Wisdom.
age.
It's a sign of
No,
wisdom.
it's a sign of age, not necessarily wisdom or knowledge.
I
think it's a
I was
difference.
giving you a softball there, Paul.
You were giving me the benefit of the doubt. I get it. Thanks, Jeff. So Google has disrupted, for lack of a better term, I'm calling it IPIDEA. IPIDEA is a massive residential proxy network that abused millions of consumer IoT devices as exit nodes. And that was the premise of my talk at BrewCon many, many years ago, was what if attackers were to go after small consumer devices that provided their access to the internet? And Larry and I at the time had just started working, or had completed the book of WT54G. Larry and I were pontificating, like, what's the worst that could happen? And I was like, well, one of my takes on it was if you could gain control of these consumer-based IoT devices, that you could affect change and use it for nefarious purposes. And I had the whole thing, like a lot of things in that talk came true, but a lot of things that are happening today are offshoots of that, in malicious actors using these devices for very evil things, including building like massive botnets. It says the network was fueled by shady monetization SDKs that pre-compromised Android IoT devices that were rolled out basically as proxies. So like pre-owned, essentially, that we've talked about before. Over 550 threat groups used the infrastructure in a week for credential stuffing, fraud, and state-aligned operations, making residential IP space a prime covert channel. So like we've talked about, they're weaponizing the small devices that don't have much in the way of security, as we've outlined on the show before, to accomplish their goals. But Google, to their credit, has attempted to disrupt not just this one with IPIDEA, but also Badbox as well. In I think a couple of other instances where Google's trying to do that, as we've talked about, right? Like cutting it off at the source means maybe Amazon doesn't sell these devices as much as they do, but they still do today, as far as I can tell.
So, I mean, some of the stuff actually, when you're going through and installing some of these Trojans, you actually consent to be an exit node for their proxy network, which I thought was crazy. And the IPIDEA folks, if you look at the list of proxies that live on it, you'd have no idea they were connected to IPIDEA. So, but it's like, and apparently these were monetizing SDKs that developers installed just to like get money for the download on their app without realizing they were also a proxy that added an exit node. So it's like developers need to be careful and users need to watch what proxy they're agreeing to, choose wisely. But I guess just, buyer beware. I'm glad Google shut these down. It's kind of cool. damn, this stuff was tricky. So
Well, I think, they're preying on the economy, right? Like,
yeah, I agree.
the big manufacturers in my mind that help curb this problem by offering legitimate devices that highly scrutinize and get this kind of malware off those systems are NVIDIA and Apple. But those devices are expensive. So when you go to the next tier down, we're getting this pre-owned by default in applications that do that. And like, again, it's kind of like, oh, well, I don't know. Like, I'm just buying a cheap device from Amazon. I'm not, doing anything malicious. But when you do that, you're enabling criminals to do criminal things. How we combat that may be a story for another time, because we're about 2 minutes over.
How'd we do on your promo?
We did pretty good. So residential proxies, we talked about Fortinet, but we didn't talk about Ivanti or the ASUSTOR NAS devices, which is interesting. I had a conversation with those devices, and I've been actually looking at buying one of them, and a researcher found some vulnerabilities in it. We talked about that. We did pretty good, though.
Pretty good? Okay.
We did pretty good. I mean, that was last week's story. National Cyber Director. We didn't talk about Booz Allen losing their worker over insider leaks. Might have been the one big one we didn't talk about, but maybe for next week. So thank you guys for joining the show this evening. Thanks everyone for listening and watching this edition of Paul's Security Weekly. Larry, take us out.
Over and